Hello and welcome to Game Design Hour. I'm your host, Miles Goldsmith, and on each episode, I sit down with the people who create the video games you know and love. On today's episode, I sat down with one of the game developers behind the video game Unboxing the Cryptic Killer. Unboxing the Cryptic Killer is a mystery puzzle escape room game, and it is a ton of fun. Without any further ado, let's meet our guest and get into the interview.
I'm Adrian. I'm CEO of 11 Puzzles, and I started this company 3 years ago as a side project. But a year and a half ago, I decided to leave my full-time job and to focus on 11 Puzzles 100%. And now we are here. We've released 4 games already, and we are working on the 5th one, and we are having so much fun.
So, what was the first thing that really sparked your interest in creating video games?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I guess, I wanted to make games for majority of my life. I was a gamer since, I was a child. However, I took a different path in my life personally. I started working in IT very early on, and this is the career path that I took for many, many years. And actually, I started making games. It was 3 years ago by now, during the pandemic, because during the pandemic, I was really bored, and my wife was bored, my friends were bored, and we didn't have, enough things to do. And we also are huge fans of escape rooms. So we couldn't go to the physical ones. Obviously, everything was closed. So we started playing some escape rooms online. And honestly, we didn't really enjoy them that much. And someone, I think it was my wife, she had an idea. Let's make one our own. Let's build one. And none of us, knew at all, how to make games. But we thought that it's a great opportunity to start and to build something. And later on, on our way, we realized that it's so much harder to make games than we initially thought. But we persevered and we released our first one. And this was like the moment where I realized, hey, I had this dream for years, and now I made a game and it was so much fun. Why I don't do this for the rest of my life, maybe?
So I also love escape rooms, and I was also feeling that sort of thing with the game. Could you tell me a bit about sort of your shift from working in IT to now going and making video games? Like what were some of the major differences in that shift, and what was that learning process like?
Oh, that's a very, very broad subject. That's I don't really know where to start. I guess first, IT is very, very well organized, and I worked for a big company, and I had multiple teams that I was working with. I was managing multiple teams. And then, the first huge shift for me was that, all right, now I'm alone and I'm building a game. I don't have a team. I need to build a team. And I need to focus on that. And I need to focus on both building a business and making a fantastic game. And now, I don't have a parachute in the form of a big company that will always take care of me. Now, all the decisions I have to make are my own. And, I will have to focus, and I have to work on this. And, every decision will have a very, very huge meaning for the game and for the company and for everything that we are doing. So that was the first huge difference. The other is I noticed that the motivation of people is very different. In IT, people are very focused on, I'd say, on either technical parts or doing the part of a huge project very well. In game dev, I noticed a lot of people just have fun. They just enjoy what they are doing, and they are so happy to be part of the process of making a game, and then be able to say, this is what I've made. This is the game I was working on, and this part is me. And it's so refreshing. I have to say, this change in perspective and this change of mentality is so fantastic for me. I enjoy working in game dev now and making games so much that, I'm just thinking why I haven't done this shift earlier.
Pretty much every game has strange or interesting things that were brainstormed at one point, but just ended up getting cut. What were some of those sort of things for Unboxing the Cryptic Killer?
So Unboxing the Cryptic Killer, actually, it has a huge story behind it. Because, and let me just start from the beginning. We started with unboxing The Mind of a Cryptic Killer. It's a longer name, and it was an online game. Remember I was talking about the online escape rooms? Those were the games that were played in a browser. And we made it, as a very, very simple game just in a browser. And now the game that we have on Steam is a remake of that. And we shortened the name. Now it's called Unboxing the Cryptic Killer. And it has a lot of, puzzles changed and shifted. But during the development process, we had many, many different ideas. We had huge ideas of a huge overarching story that will span multiple games. And we are still trying to do that, by the way. We also had ideas, on certain puzzles that were absolutely impossible to do. And that was fun as well. I don't know. I feel like, a lot of things that we envisioned are still in the game. However, going back to the online escape room part and the browser part, the reason we actually made this game was because we decreased the scope and reduced the scope to the point of that it was really, really painful. And we did it a little bit more even that. So the game is kind of distilled into the essence of what we think a good gameplay for a game like this is. However, there is a lot of other things, as you said, that were left on a cutting board. And the game that we are working now on the next game will be much different. In unboxing the Cryptic game, the Cryptic Killer, all the puzzles are sort of in a box, and you are trying to raise the time to defuse a bomb. But we wanted this to be a detective story where detectives are chasing a killer and they are on the way solving puzzles, but also, they are unraveling the mystery, and there is sort of a deduction work, and there is a big part of a story behind the comic book like. So in unboxing the Cryptic Killer, we don't have almost any of that. We only have puzzles and we only have gameplay. But now we are building, everything that was cut and that we didn't do in unboxing the Cryptic Killer will be in our next game. So we are really excited about that.
So when creating puzzles for a game like this, it's really important to have a sort of balance of making the puzzles easy enough that the players can complete them, but not so hard that the players give up and quit the game. And I think you all did a really good job with the hint system in this game. Could you tell me a bit about making these puzzles to achieve that sort of balance?
We quickly realized that making puzzles, well, first of all, making puzzles is really hard. Then we realized that making cooperative puzzles for 2 players is even harder. However, we very quickly came up with a few certain rules that at least we need to follow when we are designing a puzzle. Well, for example, one is balance. We put a lot of effort in balancing the game well. We don't want, in a lot of games like this, one player is reduced sort of to a person that relays information, and the other player is doing the fun stuff. He's interacting with certain devices or solving puzzles. And I wouldn't call this, a nice balance. But in our game, we wanted both players to be equally important in a game. So we started balancing puzzles this way. We wanted, and we did it in a way that we either have puzzles that are symmetrical. So, players have similar responsibilities and they need to accomplish similar actions. Or sometimes, one player has a little bit more fun part of the puzzle, and the other one, needs to relay information. But we flip this very quickly. So that was, another part that was important for us. In terms of puzzle design as well, we also quickly realized that we need to make the puzzles much simpler if they were for a single player. Because of the communication part, the players in our games, they need to communicate constantly. They don't share the screen. They are separated. They see different clues and different puzzles. Therefore, they need to communicate all the time. And for this to be effective, from the beginning, we had to think very carefully what we put in the game and how the players would describe it. And then we had to make the puzzles a little bit easier, because of the communication aspect would add another layer of difficulty to the game. Another one is that we noticed that some puzzles even don't have to be puzzles. They can be like, a mini games where players interact with each other and they just have fun. And balancing that was a huge part of the design as well, that we had puzzles that we considered a little bit more difficult. And then we had puzzles that weren't really puzzles, that were just there for fun. So that was another way, how we balanced things. Was there anything else? I think mostly that's it. We have, a bunch of smaller rules here and there, but those are the most important parts. Oh, there is one more thing that for us was also very important. I mentioned there was a part when one player needs to relay information to another one. And we also noticed that even in a single player game, if you have, for example, a newspaper with a clue, and then you have to switch to another view to use the clue that you have found, then you have to switch back and forth a lot. And maybe for a single player, the game, that's okay. But now when we had two players, we designed every puzzle in a way that when certain input needs to be put in the game, then other player has only one thing to look at and to relay information. And there is no going back and forth in terms of switching views and moving around. So that was another design decision that we made that was very important for us. And I guess the last one is that we stick until this time is that we don't have an inventory system, and that's for a reason, because we haven't figured out how to put an inventory system in a game like this that will be useful, that will be fun for the players. Because in a lot of games, inventory system in the end is a tool to just use everything on everywhere and try, all different combinations and all different systems. So we decided not to do inventory system. Reduce the scope to the bare minimum and focus on puzzles that are cooperative by nature without, in this case, inventory.
So another major part of achieving this balance is playtesting, and especially in a puzzle game, you can't really do much playtesting yourself because you know all the solutions to the puzzles. What was your sort of process for playtesting the game?
Yeah, so, first, in my opinion, you actually can do a lot of playtesting yourself, but it needs to be like in a certain structure. It means that you really have to think where the player can go wrong, can, misunderstand something, can just, have troubles. And, when we are playing and we are playtesting ourselves, we are constantly asking ourselves, what can go wrong here? How a player would describe this, or how my mom would describe this, or, how certain other person would interact with this. And we've caught a lot of things through this process, actually. And then during the playtesting process, that's a difficult part for a game like this, because obviously, when you had one playtester, then on the next iteration, you need to ask someone else. So you need to have a steady influx of great playtesters. However, there is the community, escape room community is huge, and there are people that are so happy to help with things like that we never had problems with finding playtesters, and we are asking on Facebook groups or on our Discord recently, and we never had any problems about that. And another aspect, and this is I would love to say by design, but it's not, is that the way the game plays, if we during the playtesting session, one of game developers is present, then we know exactly what the players are doing and, what their thought process is, because they need to communicate all the time. They are exactly describing, their thought process and what they are doing and what they should be doing. So this actually helps a lot. We don't have to do many post playtest interviews or, hey, can you please write down your ideas or anything like that. We pretty much have everything during the session because we are just sitting there and listening, and we know exactly where they had problems and what they enjoyed or not.
During these play testing sessions, would you record the entire thing and rewatch it all over, or would it be taking notes during it? How was your process for keeping track of they're taking too long here, they're struggling with this puzzle, that sort of stuff?
It depends. Most often than not, we are not recording them because this is when people tend to feel observed a little bit more. They feel and they act more natural when they are not recorded. So I'm just taking a lot of notes during the playtest, but also during the playtesting. And even afterwards, people will tell you this was broken and that was broken. Or even when we are reading reviews or people are, sending feedback to us, the important part for us is not to implement exactly what the playtesters are doing or telling us to do, but try to find the root cause. And actually, if I think, watching the recording of of the playtest session, I don't think I would catch as much as when I'm just there and I'm listening and I'm observing, because I'm looking for maybe not the parts, how long people are taking in this part or whether they understood this or not, but more like a root cause of certain problems. Let me give you an example, because we had in our game that came out before unboxing the Cryptic Killer, it was a free game called Unsolved Case. And we had a puzzle there with some lasers. And those lasers, the players, they need to bounce them off a pieces of glass and they need to direct them in certain areas. And for a while, we had a feedback that it's the worst puzzle in the game, that they hated it for some reason. And they spent so much time there and that we should absolutely remove this puzzle. And instead of removing it or redesigning it, we did a couple of very small tweaks. The pieces of glass, the laser is bouncing off of, we made them a little bit bigger. Some obstacles on the way, we made them a little bit smaller. The goal where they need to direct the laser, we made it a little bit bigger. And some of those small adjustments, suddenly everyone loves this puzzle. And they say that's the best one in the game because it's just simpler. And, whether if they struggle a little bit with controls, they still can do it. But we realized that that's the problem only because we are looking for a root cause, why they are struggling there and why they say that it's not a good puzzle.
So this game has a overarching story that is shown a lot through the cutscenes of the game, which I really liked. They were in a sort of comic book-y style of cutscenes. Can you tell me a bit about developing the story and telling it through these cutscenes?
That's another long subject, because from the beginning we really, really wanted to include an interesting story in the game. But as I mentioned in the unboxing the Cryptic Killer itself, the whole story is contained into a box, and we kind of struggled to build a really interesting narrative around that. But we had a couple of really interesting characters. So we just put them there and we allowed them to interact with each other and to basically see, what will happen and, how it will go. However, in the long term, in our, for example, in our upcoming game, the story will be much bigger and the story will continue the short period of events in unboxing the Cryptic Killer, and it will span, the whole will span a couple of days probably, and the whole interview process and how they find subjects and there will be a lot of puzzles and it will be much bigger. However, going back to the story part, finally in the next game we kind of started from really designing and figuring out the story first. And then we built, the whole narrative and puzzles and locations and everything around that. And now it's, much more consistent and much better. In unboxing the Cryptic Killer, as I mentioned, it started as an online game in the browser where there was no story in the beginning at all. And we added the story and we tried to fit that story in the Steam version. And I think that we did a really good job there. However, like this constraint made it that I think it could be better, and it's a very small part of the bigger narrative, I'd say. So I'm really excited about what's coming, and shifting the design that we made during the development of our next game, I think will very positively influence the quality of the story and the excitement that the players will have when they are discovering the mystery of it.
So which parts of the game did you have to put the most time and effort into to get it sort of just the way you wanted it?
We have one part of a process that we like to call polishing the puzzle. And since the puzzle inception, there is a lot of time that takes us to the final part where we feel like this is it. And this polishing part is probably 80% of the whole development process, because we would love to just, figure out the puzzle and put it in the game and be perfect from the beginning. But it's never the case. We always have to, we've put it in the game, but also we could do this and maybe we could do that. And this part is not working. So we are changing it. And then we are, adding some graphics. And during this process, we have a few more ideas and so on and so on. But this polishing process is very, very important for us, because I believe this is the part that differentiates a good game from a fantastic game. So that's why we are spending a lot of time during, in this process to just make it perfect. We even went to, we even quite often had to remove puzzles from the game, because we were focusing on a couple of others so much that we thought, all right, we won't have time to include this or that, but it's more important to give the players every puzzle that is very well polished, instead of giving them twice as many puzzles, but 70% of them are not really well designed or prepared.
Is there anything that you sort of wish you knew before starting work on the game?
Honestly, no. I mentioned in the beginning of our talk that I didn't know how hard making a game is, but I still, wouldn't wish for me to know that, because otherwise probably I would say, no, I'm not doing this. This will be, a huge challenge, but I didn't know this. And I was like, all right, let's make a game. And honestly, this kind of was how we operate from the beginning of 11 puzzles until now, and how we will operate going forward. We try not to think about how hard something is going to be. We focus on how fun it's going to be for the players. Another part of the development process, I guess, it's game dev, it's chaotic, it's, artistic. It's very hard to put in big boxes in time slots, because the whole process, we have no idea how much certain things will take. Mainly because of the polishing process I mentioned, right? It can take a week, and it can take 4 weeks for the puzzle to be great and perfect. But apart from that, I don't think there is anything, I wish, I would know, that there is huge joy in discovering the whole process and everything that needs to be done during the game development.
Are there any sort of fun, weird, interesting, small little details that you've added into the game that you really like, but you don't see too many players notice?
Yeah. Well, for example, our main characters, Ali and Old Dog, they were both influenced by certain actors. And we don't see, we saw the resemblance there sometimes, not often, but not many players really notice that. So this is a part, where someone really notices, oh, this person is kind of similar to this one, to this actor or to that actress. That's a really fun part for us when someone notices that. But the influence is very small. It's not like, they are really based on, real humans. There is sort of an inspiration that was there. Yeah, I think that's the main part. That I would pinpoint here. That's really fun about that.
Are you able to tell me which actors they were influenced by?
Oh no.
So what do you feel was the biggest lesson that you learned from working on the game?
The biggest lesson, there is quite a few, but for me, for my whole life, I was taking my work very, very seriously. And that was at times very stressful, obviously. But now I kind of shifted my mindset when I'm developing the game because, I shifted the industry and I decided also to shift my mindset. And during the development process, I just tried to have as much fun as possible. And this is a huge shift. And this is a huge lesson that I learned that, probably in other industries, I could do this as well. And in IT, I could do this probably as well. But in game dev, it's so much easier. And this is something that I learned. And this is something that I would say even allowed me to be where we are here as a company, because there were like long nights or sleepless nights when I was working on a game and trying to meet a deadline or fixing a bug or something like that. But this sort of joy of creation allowed me to overcome all of this and just to have fun during the process. So yeah, I would say that's kind of like the biggest lesson.
So the game was sort of left in a place where the story could be expanded. Do you all plan to add more content or maybe create a sequel to the game?
Yes, actually there is a sequel coming up, hopefully early next year. It was supposed, so this is something that we will announce shortly. Probably by the time this episode is out, there will be an official announcement. But the initial plan was to bring another online game that we released that was called Parallel Lab also to Steam, and to expand on the story, add a little bit more puzzles, and to release a sequel to Unboxing the Cryptic Killer that we have on Steam right now. But we kind of, I'm sorry to say, failed to do that because our ambition took over, and we decided that no, this game needs to be much bigger and we need to tell the story the way that we wanted. So we decided in the middle of development process, actually, that no, we won't constrain ourselves that much. We want to make a bigger game, better game, and to include a lot of things that were left on a cutting board during the development of Unboxing the Cryptic Killer. So we aim for early next year for the release, and the game will be 3, 4, maybe 5 times bigger than Unboxing the Cryptic Killer, and will have much more story and many more features. And this is where we really start experimenting with the whole cooperative game dev aspect. So stay tuned for that. I think it's going to be amazing, and we are really, really excited about that. Early next year, also there will be a free demo available for this game. So keep an eye on that as well. But yeah, definitely we are expanding on the story, and we are bringing another one, and we have hundreds of ideas for a couple of other games, and we actually have storyline for 2 others, an idea for the 3rd one. So yeah, there is going to be a lot of new games coming, hopefully soon.
Exciting. So you being someone who this is kind of your first game, what would be your biggest piece of advice to a newer game dev trying to go and make their first game?
Yeah, that's a great question. There is quite a few and quite a lot, but well, I mentioned this first. Have fun. Like game dev is the best place to be. Like it's really like the best industry to be working in. So just have fun during the process. Second one, I would say reduce the scope to the bare minimum, because it's very tempting for a game developer to build, the next Skyrim or Cyberpunk or something like that. But it's not feasible, especially if that's a first game, Well, actually, the next game that we are working on, the Parallel Experiment, this will be our fourth released game. And we started 3 years ago, and it was for a year and a half. It was kind of like a side project, and we weren't doing much. So we released pretty much 4 games in a year and a half. And now we are building a fifth one. But we did this because we reduced scope to the bare minimum. This allowed us to make the game fairly cheap. This allowed us to validate the idea and, to see whether the players will like it or not, and to perfect the formula. And this part I think is very important as well. And all other games we are going to build upon this. So those would be my advice for people. Reduce the scope, have fun, and release as many games as possible, because that's the only way you are going to be better and better at making the games.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been great sitting down with you.
Thank you. It was super fun.
And that was the episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. If you're interested in this sort of content, make sure to follow or subscribe. It's different on every platform. And if you think a friend might like the show, make sure to share it with them. Also, consider leaving us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And if you want to stay up to date with what's going on with Game Design Hour, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok at Game Design Hour. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope I can see you next time.